Hello everyone, and welcome to some more horrific news. Right, I suppose to give a bit of premise how I found this article. It was one of the role-playing groups on Facebook. Somebody decided to make a snarky message, of course under anonymous. So this is the thing Facebook has now, you can post in groups as anonymous, not your name. So as always, with that, just opens the door for hyperbolic statements and combativeness, and it's an element, I don't know whether it's the online thing, but it's something that's come into role-playing games lately, and I honestly don't think they're true fans. I think they're just trying to stir the pot, like, most people who don't have any charisma, personality, but they want attention, so that's how they get it on social media, and of course they always hide. Anyway, I thought I'd look into the game itself because it's not one I'm 100% familiar with. I've heard it, but I've not actually played it myself, so it seemed interesting. So anyway, as always, of course, the full article will have a link in the description if you want to go check it out, but let's dive into it. The Arkham Horror Files RPG needs to take risks, like the franchise always has. The announcement of a tabletop RPG set in the Arkham Horror Files universe arrived earlier this month, alongside a collage of mixed feelings. Whilst the world isn't begging for a role-playing game based on the horror franchise, it could be genuinely great if its creators are willing to take some risks. That's pretty much like the horror genre. I've noticed Chaosium's got quite guilty of it. A lot of their rulebooks now are very sanitized, and it's all about this safety of players. It's like if you're playing a horror game and they're meant to be mostly adult players, mature players anyway, that kind of puts the responsibility on you. But this strange, like I said, this element's come in and it's social media, and there are probably people that don't, like, they're not interested in the game or telling a good story. That once again, it's just activism, and it just annoys me because, as we've seen, these sort of people ruin everything. It's just their whole mindset, and it doesn't matter what it is, that's what they want to do. But anyway, let's carry on. Obviously, I'll be throwing my own opinion in here now and then. The Arkham Horror Files is unique in the tabletop gaming industry for basically being one of a kind, and that is the closest thing we have to a cinematic universe, featuring titles such as Arkham Horror, 3rd Edition Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness, 2nd Edition, and Arkham Horror. The card game and Arkham Horror Files is a collection of tabletop games that all take place in the same fictional universe. Though the types of tabletop games vary throughout the Arkham Horror Files, from the co-op miniature gameplay of Mansions of Madness, 2nd Edition to quick dice rolling of Elder Sign, they all share elements of narrative and tone that remain consistent within each game. Rather than just being games that take inspiration from the Cthulhu mythos, entries in the Arkham Horror Files universe often feature a recurring cast of characters that will pop up in multiple games, such as the Akachi Onoli, a shaman who appears in Arkham Horror, the card game and Eldritch Horror, or the explorer Monterey Jack, who has been included in Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Besides recurring characters, games in the Arkham Horror Files collection have other shared aspects, such as an emphasis on narrative, regardless of whether it's a shorter title like Elder Sign or a much longer one such as Eldritch Horror, and a similarly bleak tone designed to prepare players for the worst, as well as imbue playthroughs with that signature cosmic horror flavour that the Cthulhu mythos is famous for. Though creating more games for an existing franchise might seem like the safest move possibly in today's climate, the situation is a little different when it comes to the tabletop. The Arkham Horror Files, despite the number of popular titles in its franchise, is still nowhere near as recognisable a universe as the Marvel comic book universe or Alien, both of which have their own tabletop role-playing games now, which is why a better approach to this upcoming RPG would be to provide something unique rather than rely wholly upon name recognition. That's a fair point, as so many people now jump on franchise bandwagons, don't think it through, and then they make absolute guff that nobody likes, and then they work against themselves. Especially RPGs. If it's traditionally board games and card games, creating an RPG is something different. You need to know what you're doing. There's nothing worse than a badly written RPG that leaves first of all, whoever's going to run the game confused as to how to do it, and more importantly, the players that don't know what they're in. I've said this before, and if you've seen some of my unboxings and reviews, some of the best written horror right now is actually in the RPG world. People who are writing games understand the level of detail you have to go in, and the fact that you have to leave enough questions as well. It's not striking that fine balance because the players need room to build their own narrative while playing the game, but also they need a good solid foundation of a world that they can immerse themselves in. And if you don't do that right, your game fails. So I think there's a recognition of that within the RPG world. And if these people haven't jumped on board that, or they haven't done this before, they need to think carefully. It's not like other entries in the Arkham Horror Files universe haven't taken risks. Far from it. When the original Arkham Horror was acquired by Fantasy Flight Games, the current publisher behind titles in the Arkham Horror Files collection, it was re-released in 2005. It's roughly the same game, albeit with a new coat of paint. However, in 2018, a 3rd edition of the horror board game was published, this time offering an entirely new approach to the Arkham Horror formula, one that was more closely resembles 2013's Eldritch Horror, solidifying it as a Fantasy Flight's own take rather than simply an updated version of the original Chaosium game. Yeah, that's right, because Mansions of Madness, that was Call of Cthulhu. Fantasy Flight has messed about with previous versions of its own original board games too. The first edition of Mansions of Madness requires a player to take the role of a games master, performing all the admin necessary for the other players. In 2016, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition released with one significant change from the original. It no longer needed a player to take the role of GM. Instead, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition has players downloading a companion app that they can use to handle all the administrative stuff required for the game, thereby leaving all players free to explore the towers of the mansion themselves. That's actually not a bad idea. Yeah, because if you've seen the couple of games I've played on Adam's channel, the board games where somebody has to be basically the GM and runs it against the players, it doesn't give the GM much of a chance to just play in. They always have to be responsible. And sometimes, especially like a board game setting, everyone wants to just jump in. Both of these changes had the potential to seriously piss off the fans of previous editions and cause their player base to lose interest in the series. However, by taking these risks with both Arkham Horror 3rd Edition and Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, the two titles have managed to stay relevant within the tabletop gaming community, and maybe even attract entirely new players by offering a more accessible experience than the older versions. I've seen this before as well. In fact, I've had snarky comments in some of my posts about editions. If you don't like a new edition, you don't have to play it. If you have all the material for a previous edition and you are happy playing that, carry on. If there are new, like we hear this with Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, there's people just like, meh, and Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, there's people, I'm not a massive fan of it myself, I don't think it's a good storytelling platform, but then I'm not a massive D&D fan. But I like Cthulhu 7th Edition. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The system's a system. What's important is the storytelling aspect. So if you have a particular system and you're used to running it, and I think it's more keepers and GMs than players have this issue for some reason, obviously because they're doing most of the work when it comes to putting a game together. But if you have a particular system and if people want to play with you in that system, crack on. I don't understand the snarkiness. It's like when a new edition of 40k comes out, you've got all your previous miniatures, you use them, and if you don't like the rules and you've got people that don't like the rules, then play the old version. What's good though is if new scenarios get published, that's always good. Always having a new scenario if you're not homebrewing all the time. So all you do is you take that scenario and the characters and you just convert them to the previous edition. Job done. The important thing is the story beats, with especially role-playing games. That's what it is everyone turns up, and as long as they're having fun and a story's being created and the keeper enjoys running it, the players enjoy playing it, that's all you want at the end of the day. Once again, I think it's this culture of social media and nobody can discuss anything anymore. Everything has to be hyperbolic statement followed by counteractive hyperbolic statement, and then the conversation just evolves. You'll find a lot of these people probably don't get invited to games. If that's their personality, then they're that guy. You've always heard that in all sort of games term. That guy people don't want to play with, and they always find themselves getting ostracized. So there's probably a bitterness there, but don't have a self-reflection. They'll go, yeah, maybe I'll stop doing what I'm doing. But c'est la vie. The world is what it is, and we're never going to change it. All we have to do is find our own little bits and try and make the best life for ourselves, and that's not just working life, but our hobbies and how we spend our interaction and our friendships. That's all you can hope to do in this world, is find the right people that enrich your life and make the best of it. Anyway, let's get back to the article. This is why I'm hoping that Fantasy Flight may be willing to take some risks with the Arkham Horror Files role-playing game. The worst thing that could happen with the horror RPG is it relies too heavily on the Arkham Horror Files brand and ends up fading into the shadows of TTRPGs with more recognizable names. Call of Cthulhu is a tabletop role-playing game that continues to be played to this day, despite being over 40 years old at this point. There isn't a definitive reason as to why Call of Cthulhu has survived, where other older RPGs have failed, but its gameplay mechanics, which do a fantastic job of building atmosphere and emphasizing survival horror, which have certainly helped it stand out amongst other role-playing games. Call of Cthulhu is different. That's would have made this attempt, like I said, to sanitize it. It's just been, people don't get into Call of Cthulhu to survive. You kind of know your character's stuffed, and when you have that realization, you sort of embrace it. And you're playing a human character, not a superhero, so your character can get hit in the head with a brick, and that's your game over. That's just the nature of it. But that's a liberating thing as well, because then you don't get super attached. You're not afraid to run away from the danger, because that's what you would do in real life. If something with tentacles and teeth and that is dissolving, munching somebody in front of you, you're not going to hang out. You're running out that door. That's fine. And there's that aspect of it that makes it unique. And what Call of Cthulhu's done, unlike D&D, with their licensing, is they've been more collaborative. People can write scenarios, and we have an absolute plethora of TTRPG authors And when you have a wide expanse of authors and imaginations, and it's not just, as long as they stick to the rule book, but the scenarios can be anything. If you check out, I've interviewed a couple of TTRPG authors now on the channel, and they're just the tip of the iceberg, of the absolute plethora of talent out there. So that's brilliant. And that's what it does. It refreshes, it adds extra. It also doesn't mean that the company itself has a small development team that they're having to pay a salary and worry about pumping stuff out all the time. It's organic, and everything leads back to the rulebook. So that's the cool thing about it. So you're always promoting the game, you're keeping the game in the zeitgeist, and by doing that, it keeps the game refreshed. And that's why I think Call of Cthulhu has lasted. Like I said, with 7th edition and some of the writing have tried to sanitize it a bit, but if you've seen the games I've played on Brotherhood of the Dice, they're not sanitized. We embrace the full horror. So once again, it's up to the keeper and the players. You can have the game you want. If you're not a full-on gory horror fan and you don't want to explore all the darkness and you want it a bit lighter, that's fine too, as long as you find the right players and the right keeper, the person to run it. Or if you want to run it yourself, you find the right players. But the worst thing you can do is impose your will and ruin other people's entertainment. That's the worst thing. That's what creates resentment. If you start coming in to a game and people have played it and they've got a certain banter and sense of humor and a certain level of darkness they're prepared to explore, and you're not, just don't play with the group. And the good thing about today is a lot of games are online and they're streamed, so you can check out a group before you even join them. And that's the best thing to do, actually, is check out a group and see what their gameplay is like. And if you don't think it's for you, then that's fine. You can move on. You haven't wasted any of your time and you haven't created any antagonism. If you're genuinely looking to play a game and if you're genuinely looking to get involved in the hobby, if you're an activist and if you're just out to cause trouble, well, you're just going to do that anyway. That's just your mentality, and there's nothing we can do about that. But you tend not to last very long. People just can't be bothered, so you'll just find yourself not being welcome in the game. That's just the way of it. Anyway, let's finish this off. The Arkham Horror Files RPG is in the unique position of being a horror tabletop role-playing game made by a publisher with a substantial history of releasing horror games. Fantasy Flight should take this opportunity to create a horror TRPG imbued with all the best bits from previous Arkham Horror Files games, namely the punishing challenge and the potential for terrible things to suddenly and violently happen to your characters. It's already a good sign that the upcoming RPGs is not using D&D 5e, but it would be brilliant to see the Arkham Horror Files RPG supply some of the unusual gameplay elements. From Call of Cthulhu to Dread to the Alien RPG, horror role-playing games have a history of playing around with gameplay mechanics in order to take advantage of being deliberate anti-power trips. I sincerely hope that the Arkham Horror Files RPG does something similar, otherwise I fear it may become just another role-playing game left to fade into obscurity. So there you go. I suppose my question is, seeing this has like I said, I'm not a massive board game player just because where I live, and just I haven't had the people around me to play them. Last time was like the 90s when I had a cable club, but even then it was more in the tabletop role playing games, 40k. I did a wee bit of historical, and played a lot of Vampire and Werewolf, and but I played a load of games, but I wasn't really into board games. I like them, but I just haven't played enough of them really to consider myself that side of things. I just don't understand how they're going to stand out from Call of Cthulhu. And Call of Cthulhu is a beast in terms of, like I said in the article, 40-year history, absolute plethora of authors who write scenarios to keep the thing fresh, and a loyal fan base. Now, as you know, my opinion is I don't care what the game is. If it's interesting, I'll play it. I don't understand the idea of just being a player of one system and nothing else, which actually D&D players are guilty of. They play that and nothing else. Nah, that's always been a bit strange to me, but then again, thankfully, I never came in to the role-playing world via D&D. I came in via Vampire the Masquerade, so I have a completely different outlook. And I'm glad of that, actually, because I see how just a strange attitude of, I play this, therefore I can't play anything else. And the only pressure on playing a new game is on the person that runs it. As a player, you can play anything because the GM, DM, keeper, director, whatever the title goes by, mother, the person that runs the game, that's who the pressure's on, because they've got to set it up, they've got to look at the rules, they've got to get the mechanics. If they're playing it online, they've got to make it interesting. So that's where the handouts, the maps come in, all that kind of stuff. It's a big ask for someone to run a game, which is why if you have a good keeper / DM, look after them and don't be that person on the table that makes their life a misery. There's always room to be your character and step out, but just understand you're playing a game that somebody's put a lot of time and effort to try and let everybody have a good time. That's all I would say about that. But yeah, be interesting to see when it comes out. Obviously, I'll be interested in having a look at it. Of course, it'll be interesting to see what the game mechanics are. That's obviously a big thing for the person running it. Are the game mechanics simple or complicated? Like I said, I'm not too familiar with the Arkham Horror Files. I've heard of them. I've seen posts on that pop up, but I've never actually played the board game or anything. So I've no opinions on this franchise. The reason I looked at this article was, like I said, as usual, random snarky comment for absolutely no purpose but the start of the pot, which, yeah, if that's what you're into, that's what you're into. I just, like I said, just like to enjoy myself and play the right people and try and spend the best time I can with some sort of downtime, if that makes sense. But anyway, there you go. There's the article. Interested to know what you think. Is this something that even crossed your radar? Do you have a particular strong opinion on it? Do you think it has the potential to be a good entry into this particular franchise? Being tabletop, is it going to be a natural progression, or is it just going to get swallowed up by the likes of Call of Cthulhu and just be a candle in the wind to it? Anyway, there you go. Interested to know your thoughts. As always, keep up to date with the channel, do the typey clicky things, and until next time, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.